This episode of the Aaron Cohen Show is brought to you by the Cherry's Deep Concealment Holster. Same holster I trained Keanu on for the John Wick franchise. This thing runs BWB or below the waistband. Never going to fall off because of where it rides. And lightning fast draw with just a little bit of training. Go to cherriescounterterror.com and carry with comfort and concealment. Today, I'm not here to talk about Israeli special operations. I'm here to talk about a different kind of war. The war on hate and why Piers Morgan has become one of its most unaccountable soldiers. Piers Morgan claims to be a journalist, a defender of truth, of free speech. He's a tabloid personality wrapped in a suit. Now, we've known that for quite some time. His show isn't about giving people a voice. It's about giving Jew haters a stage under the guise of controversy and free speech. Piers isn't interested in anything integrity. He's interested in clicks now that he's fully on YouTube and social media. And today I'm going to break down his platforming of anti-Semitic voices and ask, what does it say about him? Let's start by understanding Piers Morgan. I don't think many of you know who he is. He's older. He's been around a long time. But for you younger bucks, I want to talk a little bit about him. His career began in the British tabloids like The Sun and the News of the World. I know this from my old bodyguard world. Morgan became known as the guy who would do anything for a headline. And whether it was bending the truth, invading privacy, smudging stories. His time at the Daily Mirror ended after he published fake photos supposedly showing British soldiers abusing Iraqi prisoners. Why? Because controversy sells, and when it came to ethics, Piers was willing to sacrifice every last one of them for the juicy story. And when Morgan moved to television, he took his tabloid tactics with him. He hosted Good Morning Britain and later Piers Morgan Uncensored, CNN Forever, where he built his brand of hosting the most shocking, divisive figures he could get his hands on. He wasn't interested in holding these people accountable. No, let me make that clear. Morgan is interested in keeping viewers glued to the screens, no matter what kind of hate he had to put on the air. And that's how we got here, to a show that consistently gives anti-Semitic voices and terror sympathizers a platform. Really quickly, if you're enjoying this show and you're a fan of my work, both on the news and here with the Aaron Cohen Show, do me a favor, consider sponsoring the show and grab yourself a mini sponsorship package down at the link in the description. They start at about $25 and they go a long way with helping to keep the lights up in the studio, help keeping that truth coming out to you guys and combating that anti-Israel misinformation. Appreciate you guys. Now let's take a look at some of the people Piers Morgan has welcomed onto his show, relatively unchallenged, unchecked, and unfiltered. Dan Bilzerian just recently was on Pierce's show. I just did an episode on that. And Bilzerian is known for his hedonistic bullshit lifestyle. But his recent appearance took it to another level. Guy questions the Holocaust, praises Yahya Sinwar, a terror leader who Israel just rightfully killed, called him a hero. But did Piers Morgan really challenge this guy? Did he put anybody else on the show to challenge him? Zero. Bilzerian's toxic words hang in the air, giving a stage to outright anti-Semitism, and lets those kind of statements go without really confronting him and all of its complicity. Now, Piers challenged him a little bit, but not much. Next, we've got Hannah Pearl Davis, a YouTube personality with a huge following online. She released a song called Why Can't We Talk About the Jews? Sorry, Hannah. You can talk about whoever you want, but I'm going to talk about you talking about it. And lyrics that downplayed the Holocaust, questioning Jewish influence, and more. And this isn't subtle. This is hate speech wrapped in free speech. And when Davis came on the Morgan show He didn't hold her, he didn't put her feet under the fire. He allowed her to defend herself casually, normalizing these views for young, impressionable viewers. And when you bring people like her on without any pushback whatsoever, you're giving their anti-Semitism a place in mainstream dialogue. Let's talk about Kanye West. And we can't forget Kanye. After his now infamous social media post threatening to go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, Kanye lost endorsements, partnerships, respect. But what did Morgan do? He brought Kanye onto his show, not to condemn his anti-Semitism, but again, to capitalize on his fame.
Well, look, we are most certainly uncensored on this show, and I want to give you the time and the platform to really explain yourself.
This wasn't an opportunity for accountability. Another rating stunt. And Morgan didn't care about the harm Kanye's words caused, otherwise he wouldn't have had him on. He cared about the clicks and the attention. Bassam Youssef and Mehdi Hassan. Kif Halak. Piers has also had figures like Egyptian comedian Bassam Youssef, who's scared from Israel right now, and British journalist Mehdi Hassan on his show, both of whom have made statements that some would interpret as anti-Semitic, which they very much are. But Piers doesn't press them on these views.
A year ago this week, I interviewed an exiled Egyptian comedian about the aftermath of October the 7th. He's on. There's a lot to catch up on. For the first time ever in the Uncensored studio here in London, Bassam Youssef rejoins me. Bassam, great to see you.
Great to see you too.
Finally in London, yes. My home city.
He gives them a free pass. And when you repeatedly invite people onto your show with a very overt anti-Semitic view and fail to confront them, you're creating an environment where these views are seen now as legitimate. I want to be clear. Platforming anti-Semitic voices is far from harmless, Piers. Here's the reality. Anti-Semitic incidents are rising globally. The Anti-Defamation League reported 8,873 anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. in 2023, up a staggering 140% increase from the previous year, and the highest number since they began tracking back in 1979. And the FBI also recorded a 63% increase in anti-Semitic hate crimes in 2023, with Jews remaining the most targeted religious group. And these statistics aren't just numbers. These are real-world consequences of normalizing hate. To understand why Piers Morgan does what he does, we need to look at the psychology behind the choices. And this isn't just about a man chasing headlines. It's about a deep-seated need for attention, validation, and control that's likely rooted in his early life. And what's fascinating is how similar this is to the very psychology we use in intelligence work. In Israeli intelligence, understanding a target's psychology is critical. It's the key to influencing behavior, recruiting assets, and flipping informants. That's why we've managed to kill so many terrorist leaders over the last year. Israel is a master at it. The same traits that drive Piers, that need for validation and his hunger for attention, are exactly what we look for when assessing a potential asset. He's very influenced. In intelligence, psychology isn't just a consideration, it is the foundation. And we look for individuals with the strong need to feel significant, to be validated, to be seen as powerful and relevant. And these are psychological levers that can be used to influence and manipulate. And Pierce's deep-rooted need for attention fits this profile perfectly, which I find very interesting. His craving for controversy and relevance aligns closely with the motivations of certain assets willing to take extreme actions to satisfy those internal needs. A little bit more on Piers. Piers was born in Omera, but after his parents separated, he took his stepfather's last name, Morgan. And that early disruption in family dynamics likely left him with an underlying need to prove and assert himself, to carve out an identity. Identity is the root of it all. And in the intelligence world, we know that a fractured early life or an unsettled sense of self can lead individuals to seek validation from external factors, often making them vulnerable to manipulation. And Pierce's choice to chase the controversy and provoke outrage on his show is the same drive we see in assets who can be influenced or controlled by feeding those insecurities. The same psychological levers that control, the validation, that hunger for recognition, that Israeli intelligence uses to influence behavior are precisely what makes Piers so drawn to that sensationalism. He's wired to push boundaries, not just because it draws an audience, but because it reinforces his own sense of relevance. But here's the risk. When unchecked, that drive to stay in the spotlight fuels not just his own brand, but global anti-Semitism. He's willing to platform hate and divisiveness to feed his need for validation while claiming it's free speech. In essence, understanding psychology and intelligence is about recognizing what motivates people and how those motivations can be turned to achieve a specific end, in our case, protecting the only Jewish state. And in Pierce's case, his psychology is what makes him dangerous, not just to the integrity of journalism, but to society. His need for control, his sensitivity to relevance, and his addiction to attention create a platform that amplifies hate. This isn't just a man who's interested in the truth. He's a man driven by insecurities, just like so many assets that we have worked with, and just as easy to manipulate. I want to take a second. I want to talk to every pro-Israel advocate and influencer out there who has been on his show. You know who you are. I want you to think long and hard before stepping onto a platform that has routinely amplified anti-Semitic voices. Douglas Murray, Emily Austin, Dershowitz. You've all gone toe-to-toe with Pierce, and it's been in good faith, thinking that you're there to defend Israel, to combat hate. But understand this. When you step onto his stage, the only one truly winning is Pierce. Morgan has hosted Bilzerian, Kanye West, Hannah Pearl Davis, Bassam Youssef, Mohammed Hajib, Mehdi Hassan, people who've made open or implied direct anti-Semitic remarks. And when he platforms people like Bilzerian who question the Holocaust, or Kanye who threatens to go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, he's not challenging them. He's monetizing them, and he's monetizing himself. And each appearance, each view, each headline, all of it fuels his brand, adding to his reputation as the so-called fearless voice of free speech. Piers, tamin li ata lo. But this isn't about free speech. It's about manipulating controversy to stay relevant. You and I both know it, and I just said it. I see you. Morgan is not a security expert. He's never put his life on the line to protect anyone, any military, any civilians. He's never led men onto the battlefield. He's not the one who will bear the real-world consequences of normalizing anti-Semitism. He won't be there in the end. You, the real advocates, will be the ones left picking up the pieces, confronting the hate he's fueled from the safety of his studio. So before you take that seat across from Pierce, my influencers, ask yourself, do I want to validate a platform that profits from both sides of the conflict? Do I want to lend my credibility to someone who has repeatedly amplified voices that question the very right to exist as a Jew? And when the cameras shut off and it's Pierce who wins and the hate is left standing stronger than before, ask yourself, was it worth it? Make your choice wisely, my Jewish influencers, my Jewish celebrities. Make your choices wisely. The fight against anti-Semitism doesn't need to be fought on a platform that profits from it. To Pierce, I have a question for you. Who do you think you are? What gives you the right to play with Jewish lives? Our public safety, our communities, sense of security, just to keep your ratings up? You sit there in your studio, safely removed from the fallout, treating hate as just another spectacle to sell with your little hates. But what you're really doing is handing a microphone to those who would see Jews erased from the earth and killed. Normalizing their rhetoric under the guise and your speech or controversy, whatever the you want to call it. You're not just a provocateur, Pierce. You're someone who's gambling with real lives. And you're fucking reckless. And it's cool. We see you. We see you. You recently tweeted, free speech is supposed to be uncomfortable. Only by hearing the polar opposite of your worldview can you be sure that you're right. Hey, Piercy dog, let's be real. Free speech isn't an excuse to platform hate. There's a difference between challenging ideas and giving a megaphone to people who deny the Holocaust or praise terrorists. And that's not uncomfortable dialogue. That's dangerous normalization of Jew hatred. And when you bring on Bilzerian and openly questions historical atrocities and endorses violence, you're not facilitating free speech or amplifying hate speech and inciting dangerous violence against vulnerable Jews around the world, my friends. And there's a reason why responsible journalists draw the line at endorsing voices that embolden that kind of harm. Take a look at Amsterdam. Take a look at what's happening in France now. There's going to be more of it. It's only going to get worse. And this isn't about being sure of your worldview, you arrogant It's about understanding the real world impact of the messages that you promote. Words have power and you know it. You've made millions off it. And platforms like yours influence people's perceptions and actions. Trust me, I know the propaganda world very well. You're not in some intellectual playground. Real people bear the consequences of legitimizing this kind of hatred. Stop hiding behind your free speech. Take responsibility for the violence your platform is about to incite. This isn't a game. You don't have the experience to understand what's at stake. You've never been in the field staring down the threats these ideologies create. You've never held the hand of someone who is dead from a terrorist attack. You're not the one dealing with the consequences of legitimizing hate. And that's the problem. You can simply walk away, close the door, pat yourself on the back, go have a cocktail with Beckham. Because it's all done, man. It's all good. The rest of us Jew fighters are going to be here cleaning up your mess. You're not brave, man. You're a coward. Because when the heat gets turned up, you're not going to be the one who's going to feel it. It's going to be us, the Jews, and our families and our communities, and our kids that are going to bear the weight of the hate that you normalize. Think carefully, Pierce, about the damage that you're causing. Hey, for you, it's just another episode. Hey, but for us, this is life and death.